Alright guys, so we're going to have a look at machine lateral raises. Two specific variations we can really program on here that are really beneficial for training those side delts. So Charlie's going to start off with the bilateral variation. Now you'll notice one thing we've just done with the setup here is that sitting all the way in and super upright actually puts us in a bit of a so-so position here as far as getting those side delts into position. And like we do often with lateral raises with dumbbells, we'd actually have a slight torso lean. Well, we kind of mimic that also here, given that we are still kind of wanting those side delts to sit on top of acting against the resistance that we're pushing against. So as you'll see, the hips are slightly further back than where the top of his spine is and his head is. So you can see that nice torso angle there. He's going to go through a couple of reps. Now one thing you'll notice as Charlie does this is, and one of the limitations of the bilateral variation is, you're only going to really be able to get up towards shoulder height or maybe just slightly above it. Doesn't make it a bad option, it just means that we're maybe not going to be able to train the entire range, but we'll get to why the single arm variation is good for that in a second. So really the goal here is just to make sure that tension is on there right from the get-go. We contract all the way through into as short a position as we can manage to get towards, and we make sure we're not throwing the weight up. So do a couple of other ones. We'll make sure we're not throwing the weight up, like thrashing up, and we also make sure that, and exactly, we're not losing contact with the placement pad here. We also make sure that because this is a machine, we can actually afford to come all the way down, but just not touching the pin against the weight stack. We make sure that the pin on the weight stack stays slightly off the bottom the entire time when we're getting back to that bottom position. Now, if we get Charlie to switch out to the single arm variation now, a couple of things we can do. Either you can bring both legs out to the side, or in Charlie's situation with this particular machine, actually it's more of a case of shifting his pelvis and his hips round just to line up a little bit more with where we want it to be. Now, the other thing this allows us to do is it allows us to individualize the setup for the individual client, for you potentially as an individual, in the scapular plane. So you'll notice now that we can straight away line up his upper arm in terms of relative to his torso, right in that sort of 20-30 degree angle there. So now he's got his arm in position, he's got that slight turn, he's still leaning maybe slightly forward, but actually we can afford to be just a tiny bit more upright if we feel more comfortable in that position. But as you'll see, Charlie still quite likes that little bit of a torso lean. From there, contracting against the pad, and now he can actually get slightly more into that shortened range, so we can see that we can get that side delt right up into that short position, controls himself out. And one of the big advantages of this single arm variation is the fact we can get a little bit more range out of the movement. Now, key thing we don't want to do is we don't want to chuck it up again and lose that contact, but we also don't want to stop just and go up again. We don't want to stop at 90 degrees if we've actually got a little bit more range to give. So that's key. The reason why we program this variation is for exactly that reason. One, comfort of setup, but two, actually being able to work through a more full contractile range. So one more good rep, Charlie. So contracting here, making sure that we are in control of those endpoints throughout the entirety of the movement.